Free speech has long been a contested subject on college campuses. In particular, if you go to school in California, you may have heard of the Leonard Law. But what exactly is the Leonard Law, and how does it relate to free speech? The Leonard Law is a California law passed in 1992 that requires all private high schools, colleges, and universities to protect their students' rights to freedom of speech, just as the government protects citizens' First Amendment rights. Usually, the Leonard Law comes up in the context of hateful or offensive speech. The Leonard Law is the reason why California universities cannot punish or discipline students for hate speech, even if it's egregious, because this would be considered a violation of the student's First Amendment rights. Additionally, this also means that the university cannot create any policies that would punitively discourage students from exercising their free speech rights, as this is what is known in law as creating a chilling effect. Oftentimes, it's not that universities don't want to punish or dissuade hate speech, it's just that legally, they can't. However, the Leonard Law does not prohibit universities from disciplining students if their speech directly incites violence or falls into a category of speech given lesser or no protection by the First Amendment, such as unlawful harassment, true threats, or obscenity. It is worth noting that the threshold can be quite high for hate speech to be deemed unconstitutional, and even speech that may be considered absolutely abhorrent might not legally cross into these restricted categories. For example, for hate speech to be considered unlawful harassment, it would have to be so severe, pervasive, and objectively offensive that it is deemed as directly impeding a student trying to receive an education. This could include someone repeatedly subjecting someone else in their class to unwelcome statements, jokes, and offensive comments on the basis of their national origin or other protected characteristics, and even after being asked to stop, they continue to engage in the behavior. Or, if the speech was coupled with conduct such as if someone launches slurs at a student while physically blocking that student from entering the only entrance to that classroom. Facts are important, and incidents have to be considered on a case-to-case basis. Minor changes in the context of the situation might change whether disciplinary action can be imposed. All of this to say, it can be quite complicated to legally designate speech as unconstitutional. Universities are allowed to moderate spaces on their campuses, so long as their policies affect all students and groups indiscriminately. For example, the university is allowed to have restrictions on where student organizations can gather, provided that these policies are enforced uniformly and without regard to content. Additionally, speech is not protected if it violates other laws. For example, spray painting university property is considered illegal because this is still vandalism. If what is being spray painted are hate symbols, then this would also be considered a hate crime. At the end of the day, the Leonard Law protects free speech, even if the law unfortunately also extends the right to engage in speech that could be considered hateful or offensive. However, freedom of speech also protects students' right to assemble and protest, and students should feel empowered to exercise those rights. Also, students have the right to not be held as a captive audience to hateful speech, so just because someone says something offensive, it doesn't mean you have to stand and listen to it. Finally, when offensive speech does occur, students have the right to engage in dialogue, whether that's with the hateful speech itself or with one another in order to create a more inclusive campus environment. Even if universities can't directly impose sanctions on the perpetrators of hateful speech, they still maintain the responsibility of supporting their students in times when hurtful speech does impact their community.